Hey everybody, welcome back to Vegas Tips and Tricks Weekly. I'm your host J.R. Swift, and today we're going to talk about a topic which people never seem to tire of, and that is selecting a hotel when you go to Vegas. It's probably the most common question that comes up in our Facebook group in one form or another, or it can be a very broad statement like, where should I stay? It could also be a list of a half a dozen hotels and people asking which is the best, or where should they stay, where shouldn't they stay. So we're going to try to summarize that a little bit today without necessarily saying stay here, don't stay here, but give you some guidelines for best selecting a hotel. Before we get started, did want to do a few housekeeping notes. Insert vacuum cleaner clip here. I don't think I even have that clip anymore. But first off, once again we did not do a podcast this week. So those of you, and I know there is a handful of loyal podcast listeners, literally a handful. So we will try to get something out this week, continuing the Vegas Memories theme, and we'll probably talk about the trip just this past September. So that's what's coming up. Number two, we did not do a monthly live this month. And I don't know if we'll do a live stream in October a little earlier than we would normally do it, or whether we'll just entirely skip a live. I really feel like between my own vlogs and those of others, y'all have seen probably about as much of me as you really need to see for a while. So I thought we could go ahead and skip that. It was not a good week in the Vegas Tips and Tricks short videos. On Tuesday, I thought what I would do is talk about some of the best views in Las Vegas. And when I do things like that, I always try to concoct some sort of semi-clever sort of title. And for some reason, the old James Bond movie, A View to a Kill, came to mind. So, I was like, okay, well, cool. These views are to kill for, or whatever. Later that evening, I was reminded, very kindly, I might add, by a couple of viewers that maybe using that term wasn't really so great, particularly when I was referring to Mandalay Bay, and particularly when we are sitting here literally on the 5th anniversary of that tragic shooting. So I did change the title, and I felt really stupid, frankly. Was certainly not making light of anything. If I could find that yet, and I believe it's still up there, I'll put a link to the walkthrough I did 5 years ago this month. There was a makeshift kind of memorial that people put up over by the Las Vegas sign, and I happened to be in Las Vegas about 2-3 weeks after the shooting, and it was still there. And so I walked through and kind of had a look at those really touching tributes to some of the victims of that shooting. So, like I said, I'll put a link to that in the show notes below if you want to check that out. Thought it was worth sharing. Speaking of shooting, yesterday or the day before, depending upon when you're watching this, I did my video short for the week on a Vegas hotel resort that I, in this case, really liked, and that was the Cromwell. And guess what? Last night I hear there was a shooting at the Cromwell. So let's just say the timing of my videos and my thoughts and ideas this week have not necessarily been their very best. But let's hope that what we've got coming forward here in the rest of the show will make up for it. Okay, so you're headed to Vegas. Maybe you used some of the tips from last week's show to pick just the right time to be there, just the right length of time to be there. But now you need to pick a hotel. And that can be pretty overwhelming because Las Vegas has dozens upon dozens, probably hundreds of different hotels and motels. And unlike most cities, we're not talking about little roadside motels, your Days Inn, your La Quinta, your Red Roof Inn, your Holiday Inn Express. Although I think Las Vegas probably has all of those as well. But no, we're talking about massive resorts with thousands of rooms. 10 of the top 20 hotels in the entire world are located basically on the Las Vegas Strip. So you've got a lot of choices, and you've got a lot of good choices. So what we're going to try to do today is narrow it down using a couple of categories. We're going to talk about budget, we're going to talk about location, we're going to talk about value. So let's get started by talking about budget. Okay, budget. What should you expect to pay for a Las Vegas hotel room during the week and on the weekends under normal circumstances? Well, keep in mind that you have to include some extra fees. And this is where things get pretty controversial, but we're just going to talk about it. We're not going to really debate the issue in detail. Pretty much all Las Vegas hotels, there's a few exceptions that we'll mention somewhere along the way, charge what's called a resort fee. And the resort fee will range from $30 to $50, most of them closer to $50 these days. In some cases, depending upon the deal you get, your room rate may actually be lower than the resort fee. You may wonder why hotels do this. Is it simply to try to deceive you, the consumer? Well, some people could debate that. One of the big reasons is going back to what we talked about last week with these huge travel sites. A lot of people will simply search for a hotel and they'll look for the least expensive option. So if you are competing against a hotel that has a resort fee and you don't, the hotel with the resort fee is going to pop up towards the top of that inexpensive hotel list. Because you're only going to initially be charged that room rate. You won't pay the resort fee until you check in and then check out. Is there a way around it? No, not really. Some people have gotten around it, I guess, by complaining enough. Your best bet is to play a lot in the casino and then ask a host or the Players Club if they can waive the resort fees. A lot of people have had good luck with that. The thing is, it is something you have to keep in mind, because if you do look at those sites, or just if you look at the actual hotel website, you might see a room rate of $39, $49, $59 midweek, which is pretty good. Or maybe on the weekend, you might see something like $89, $99, $119. Again, pretty good price for the weekend. But you got to keep in mind that that's not including tax, and it's not including what's probably a $40 to $50 charge for that resort fee. So what's realistic midweek? Unless you have some kind of a deal through a Players Club, or if you've gotten some kind of deal through a website or some kind of a special, you can pretty much expect to pay around $100 for your room during the midweek period, approximately Sunday to Thursday. That can vary if there's a 3-day weekend involved, but that's going to be a pretty fair deal, and that's going to be your inexpensive hotels. Your Flamingos, your Bally's, your Excaliburs, your Luxors. When you start looking at hotels that are a bit more upscale, you can easily double and triple that number even during the middle of the week. Now, if you're there over the weekend, that $100 is liable to turn into $200 or even more depending upon the weekend. So you need to budget that amount depending upon when you're going to figure out what you're going to be paying for your room. Okay, so when you go to Las Vegas, it's all about location, location, location. And you want to be on the Las Vegas Strip, at least for your first trip to Las Vegas and probably your first couple of trips, because that's where you're going to see the most things the easiest. Now, be careful. If you look at various hotel and motel descriptions, they'll often say that they're on Las Vegas Boulevard, just a few miles or a few blocks from the main Strip area. There's a difference between Las Vegas Boulevard and the Strip. Las Vegas Boulevard runs from the north side of Las Vegas all the way past Mandalay Bay, basically to the end of the city, which is around where the M Resort is. A really nice property. You probably don't want to stay there on your first trip. So keep in mind, if you see a hotel and it says it's on Las Vegas Boulevard, it needs to be between Mandalay Bay on the south and the Strat on the north. Some people would argue it probably needs to be even more centrally located, but it definitely needs to be in that area, between about 2000 Las Vegas Boulevard South and 4000 Las Vegas Boulevard South. If you see that address and it's within that range, you're pretty much on the main Strip area. If you see something and it says 7000 South Las Vegas Boulevard, or even worse, 600 South Las Vegas Boulevard, that's not where you want to be. You're going to be so far away from the things you want to see, you're going to spend all your time and money just getting to those destinations. So ideally, I always like to say that the best place to stay is as close as you can get to the intersection between Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. It has been referred to for many years as the Four Corners. There are other Four Corners in Las Vegas that are pretty good as well. If you like some of the properties on the south end of the Strip, the intersection between Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard is also a good choice. And there's some great properties north of this area as well. The thing about being right there in the center is that you're close to the properties on the south end of the Strip, as well as properties on the north end of the Strip. You can walk to most of the attractions you want to see. Now, there are some great properties in Las Vegas in the downtown area and off the Strip, sometimes way off the Strip, but those are places to check out after you've visited Las Vegas several times, not on your first trip. What we're going to talk about now is value. And I would say that by and large, Las Vegas hotels provide a lot of value compared to the hotels you may find in most cities. Not only is the price usually quite a bit lower, but you have these massive resorts with all of these amenities. Even some of the budget properties have enormous swimming pools, for example. The Flamingo, which is usually one of the cheaper properties and certainly not the nicest place to stay, has a huge pool with a lot of party action. I mean, it's for the right people, a great choice. You go down to Luxor or Excalibur. Those are large pools. They also have multiple restaurants, multiple bars, huge casinos. So, no matter where you stay, and with a couple of exceptions, I'm going to bring up a couple of exceptions, you're probably going to find that the hotel you stay at is better than 99% of the hotels in your city or in places that you regularly visit. Okay, so it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you pay a lot of money for a hotel, you're probably going to get a little bit more. So I was just going to mention a couple of hotel properties that I think are really, really high quality, and you're going to pay for it, okay? First of all, the Wynn and Encore. Excellent properties, very expensive, very much worth it. Also, right across the street is the Venetian Palazzo. Also, two separate hotels, but part of the same complex. Expensive, but worth it. Now, there's some properties that I'm a little bit less excited about because they tend to be very expensive and they don't tend to provide quite as much value. I would mention Caesar's Palace and Bellagio, for example. Those are great places to visit, iconic hotels. They kind of overcharge. The Cosmopolitan is kind of a special case. If you can get one of those great balcony rooms where you can check out the whole city from your own personal porch, it's probably worth it, but it's also a little bit overpriced. There are some sort of smaller hotels within a hotel, you might say, that also can be a great choice if you're trying to book something on the high end. There's a Four Seasons at the top of the Mandalay Bay complex. There's a property called Nomad on the top of Park MGM. Caesar's Palace has a Nobu hotel. It's a little bit different. There's also a Waldorf Astoria that a lot of people don't realize. It's right there on the Strip. A great choice. If you must have the best service, those are places to go. Now, frankly, one thing that's bad about Las Vegas hotels is the kind of quality can be a little uneven. You might check into one room and think, wow, this is a great deal. This is a beautiful, expansive, inexpensive room, comfortable. It's going to be great. And another person might get a bad room on a bad floor that hasn't been properly maintained. And to me, that's the big difference you run into between the higher end properties that I've just talked about and some of the mid-range to lower end properties. I've had good experiences at almost all of the budget properties I've stayed at, even places like Excalibur or Flamingo. Maybe not the classiest joints in town, but I've never really had an issue. But I know some people have. So when you're booking those lower end properties, do keep in mind that you're probably more likely to run into issues than you would if you spend a little more money. Now, I like some of the mid-range properties quite a bit. I've made no secret of the fact that Planet Hollywood is a particular favorite of mine. I do like the Luxor if you pay a little bit extra and stay in the tower. Mandalay Bay is nice if you don't mind being a little too far south on the Strip. And there's a lot of other options like that as well. Bally's, which is slowly transforming into Horseshoe, has always been one of my favorites. But again, some people have had issues at these same properties, so it's very possible you check in, you might not get the best of the best room. All I can say, complain, make sure that you get taken proper care of. There are some places on the Las Vegas Strip that I would not recommend. I do not recommend Circus Circus. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you have kids, and I don't know what kind of kids, they might enjoy it. But it's generally a pretty isolated property. It's pretty run down. The rooms are okay by and large, but it's just not a place that you really generally want to be. Another property is Oyo. It used to be called the Hooters Hotel and Casino, and it's pretty run down as well. Right next door is the venerable Tropicana, which is undergoing some major changes right now. I think the casino floor is closed, and they're probably going to do something different with that property, but it's been pretty rough in recent years. And I'd avoid any of the motels on the Las Vegas Strip, and I think particularly a couple of the travel lodges. Don't go there. So by and large, you kind of get what you pay for, but in Vegas, you tend to get a little more than you would in most places. So as you can see, there's a lot of choices when you visit Las Vegas. The best thing to do is find a property that fits within your budget, that lands within the general neighborhood of the Las Vegas Strip, and that provides some of the amenities, some of the value that you're looking for. By and large, most of you aren't going to spend a ton of time in your room, so maybe you just need a place to sleep and shower. Other people, though, and you know who you are going to want a little more luxurious experience. And if you do, then definitely we've made some suggestions for you here today. I think whatever you choose, as long as you choose wisely, you're going to have a great time on the Las Vegas Strip. Before I go today, I did want to extend my sympathies to my friend Walter Raines. Many of you know him as the Frontiersman. He's got a great YouTube channel, lots of great content, not just in Vegas, but all across America. Earlier this week, Walt lost his brother Bruce, and was really saddened to hear that. It is my understanding they were very close, and so just wanted to dedicate this show to the Raines family and let them know that we're thinking about them. So we will be back next week with another episode of Vegas Tips and Tricks Weekly. Until then, I hope you have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.